want to do that in an email, or do you want to do that in a phone call to the service manager?
I think we should do an email followed up by a phone call. So we don't blindside them, we just let them know that we're gonna.
Well, they'd be arranging
Yes,
anyway, so
yes.
an email would go out
Okay,
first anyway.
Okay. I just, if they're gonna do this work, they're gonna charge us, I would really like to know how long they warranty their work for.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean, that's sort of standard for a lot of,
yeah.
So you're making a motion to send an email and possibly follow up with a phone call.
conference
Yeah.
call.
And, who do you want to compose the email? I can compose it if you want.
okay.
So that's his motion.
Sure.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
3-0 on that. So we're gonna hold off putting that on a
Sure.
manifest until
Yeah.
we do that.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else?
So after
I have a
that,
question for you when you're, after you finish your list.
So I'm gonna get together, I'll get Jen those papers on the gravel and the gravel usage and that stuff. I'll get to those, so she can make some copies for you guys. I also found, up in the little office up there, an old snow sheet thing. So I'll.
Snow report?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the snow reports, so I'll bring that up there so Jen can make, a couple dozen copies of that or something like that.
Nice.
And,
So we want to have a system of the logs and the gravel getting turned over on a regular basis.
right,
Like, you guys can figure out how often you want to see how much gravel is getting laid down. This year wasn't too much because we limited it to, I think we
right.
kept it under 8,000 for the
But
entire
I
year.
documented stuff and all that, so I have all that stuff, I'll pull those pages out of my notebook
'Cause I
and
need all this stuff for
let
FEMA.
Jen,
Yeah, right.
print them out so you could have a copy of all that stuff, and like I said, she can make some copies of the snow reports, and I'll start filling those out, but other than that, that's all I've got.
I have a question. We're working on this, after we had the meeting, the special meeting with the residents on a Saturday, one of the issues that came out is they don't like looking at these plastic blue outhouses that are on these porta potties on the beaches. So they recommended we talk to a company called Bottom Feeders out of Wolfboro, Merida, that do the US Forest Service outhouses at their forest facilities, their trailheads. And the guy called me back and said he had been to Idlewild
Couple times.
multiple times, starting 4 years ago when he first got a call about this. In short, he says, you can't pump those outhouses. So we agreed that we're gonna start to pursue a plan that we converted the existing outhouses, that we sealed them off at the bottom and reconstructed them so that the plastic outhouses go inside them. And you would, right now, the idea is you enter through the right door, and the door to the porta potty is facing you inside. And you enter without having to deal with two doors if you have a little kid, you're trying to get in there, and there's,
Yeah,
and that the other door is made so that the service truck can reach in and take the porta potty out, because they don't service the porta potty, they replace them,
yeah.
is my understanding. Is
Yeah.
that what you understand?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I want
I
to
thought
look
they
into
came, sucked
whether
them
they
out,
can
cleaned them
suck
out,
them
and
out,
everything else.
yeah,
Yeah.
and not have
that's-
to
yeah, I thought that's what they
replace
did
them.
too, yeah.
I don't know,
I know.
I think the way that they do the pricing is that it's so efficient for them, is they don't have a guy on site pulling hoses.
Mhm.
The guy
Uh-huh.
puts the
Yeah.
machine, grabs it like the rocket coming
Yeah.
down,
Swaps it out of it.
Swaps it out, because
takes
when
the
I
whole
seen
thing,
them
puts it
pull
on
in,
the
they're
truck, puts a
pulling
nice
in
one that's already
with-
perfumed, you can smell it from
Yeah.
20
all
feet away.
Brand new.
20 miles.
cleaned up.
Yeah, it's,
That makes sense.
no, I mean, this has a perfume odor to it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, they're, yeah, totally sanitized.
Not the humorous perfume, Pepe Le Pew. So anyway, that's where we're moving to, and the issue with that, doing that, if we stay on that path and don't find any reason that we have to modify that path, there's two of them that the truck can't drive into, which is Deuces Beach
Deuces Beach,
and Geneva.
yeah.
And then we have to discuss whether we want to build one for Porridge Shore.
Right.
Do you know if Thusis and Geneva are as bad as Little Beach, as far as not being able to get pumped.
Boulder Beach and Idlewise are the worst.
So it's possible that Thusis and Geneva, or we don't know.
I mean, it could be, gotta take a look, I mean, but I know that the worst ones was Boulder Beach and Idlewise.
I wanna know if we'll possibly get lucky and Thusis and Geneva can.
Yeah,
Are
Did
salvageable?
Did everybody stop after they hit Boulder and were abused the most?
see, when that guy came from Bottom Feeders, you know, I had nothing to do with it. They came, like he said, several times, I think. But again, I had nothing to do with it, so
All right, I'm gonna call Mitchell Drew, because
he pumped
lost,
them one time.
he last worked on Boulder Beach.
He
Right.
pulled stuff out and he pumped them the last time,
The
before
very
they were
last time.
told that they couldn't be done again.
Right,
Oh,
so I'm gonna call him.
He also looked at them and said that there was no way he could pull the stuff out this time.
Okay, I just
Now,
need to
whether
know
that
if
was
we,
all of them or he just looked at
did he
one
stop at Boulder Beach and not look at the other
and then
ones?
say, whoa,
Right,
and walk
so
away. I
Let's,
don't,
yeah.
let's drop it there, I need to talk to him.
yeah.
That's the best that we can talk about now. Anything else for Jeff?
Alrighty.
Other than, again, a big thank you for your incredible 19-hour marathon. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
by
Do it again
himself,
Wednesday.
all by
Well,
himself.
I'm just glad it's behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
All right,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, have a good one.
See you, buddy.
I know it is, yeah, I can see it.
So at 9:24, we'll welcome Ian and Noah from Simply Water.
Morning, good morning.
Do you have items that you would like to discuss?
Anything in particular?
I have things we'll list out, we'll stay focused, but I want to see if you have things that you'd like to discuss before I start talking.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, nothing in particular.
So we are waiting from the design from Nick on the Como PRV. We got an invoice and the surveying has been done and we're waiting to see the first drawings on this. Thank you for the quote on the 2 isolation valves
Yeah.
for Grissom around that culvert. We're working on solutions for Grissom, and we're looking for a solution about connecting a water main from Bergdorf to Aspen. That's just not even on the drawing board yet, that's just discussions right now. And I notified FEMA. FEMA is actually gonna have their consolidated resource center do estimates on what they think national prices would be on getting those jobs done.
Okay.
So, not much will happen this winter, but we will start doing plans on that. We want more immediate plans for our muddy beach. So,
That's the one thing that, yeah, we do have to talk about.
let's see if we can focus on this, because this can go off on 16 different tangents.
So, I
Easily.
mean, from what we,
Let me ask questions.
yes, go
This is
ahead.
this is what we think. There's a number of things that need to be done. We can list out everything wrong things that need to be fixed with that entire facility. From the communications, to the
Yes,
cement floor, to the unknowns about the tank,
to the well.
to the wells themselves, to, let's see, to the electrical changes that have to happen for uranium equipment to go in, to the specifications of the uranium equipment. We had another test of the uranium that crossed over the line. Now we have to send out notifications.
Yes, I saw
And
that.
Wood is already on top of that because he now has expertise and all the tools.
Nice.
I
You've
still have
done it
some
once, it's
questions
easier.
for you about
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Do you want to have those questions, do you need those questions now? Or would you like to?
I think the more important part is the actual discussion of
the overall plan.
Overall
Okay,
plan.
all right.
Yeah,
So we would like to do things in preparation for getting uranium equipment in there.
Okay,
We're going on the belief that this seems to be happening more rapidly than it used to, crossing the line, and that the day is gonna come where the state is going to say that we need to treat that facility for uranium.
Yep.
I also think the way the state does it is the notifications get the users wanting
oh
the
yeah,
uranium solution. So
yes.
we'd like to stay a little bit ahead of
It
that
definitely
curve.
creates a fire. There's a reason they do it the way
We
they
don't
do
wanna
it.
talk about fires.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we know we can do the cement floor,
Yes,
and we would like to plan on replacing the tank. So we'd like your opinion on the order of things. Would you replace the tank before you started to improve the interior of that building, or would you put
Yes.
the cement floor in and then do the tank?
I would do the tank first with some, obviously we'll want some input from your engineers on it, but
Definitely.
I think considering concrete tank over steel tank is probably a worthwhile discussion at this point for, if you're staying in that same size, which I think we also talked about, increasing the size of Muddy Beach to make it a more usable situation over there. But look at concrete, anything under 30,000, you're probably gonna be, it's gonna be a better option for us probably than going.
Under
back to steel.
30,000.
Yeah,
You're talking about a buried concrete tank.
yes,
So why would concrete be better than steel?
cost, you're gonna find it should be a cost, like, we've been pricing them out lately and it's just been time and time, maybe it's 20,000, but it's somewhere in that neck of the woods, you're gonna be better off with concrete.
No fiberglass, no plastic.
Haven't considered it, I mean, if you get into like, are you talking about buried fiberglass or plastic?
Yeah.
I don't know, it's not something I've actually traveled down that pathway, anytime we've ever used plastic tanks, they've actually been above ground.
yeah.
This is a conversation with Nick anyway. right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed,
That answers that though, is that we can go with the idea that we're gonna get the tank first, that
Yeah, that made sense to me.
we were
Yeah.
thinking that. Start to rip into the building and you just put new stuff inside.
yeah, no, I think, cause it's, depending on what you do for a tank, it's gonna change how you might not even have like an exposed face into the building.
If
You
it's
certainly don't need
concrete.
to, you just need a pipe coming in, right? So, if you have a hatch on the concrete, or whether it's steel or whatever it is, steel, you usually need the face. If it's concrete, you just have like a
Yeah.
entry hatch outside, and then you just have a pipe coming into the building. So it can simplify the construction that's necessary of the building and a whole lot of other things. You also, a lot of people have been putting in concrete tanks and then building the pumps, using it as a foundation for a new station, if that's a direction that you end up looking at. You're getting into, we're adding treatment, we're gonna have to rip out 1/3 of the building anyway to put in a new wall, because the tank's coming out, we're pouring a floor, you start going, okay, well, how much is it gonna cost to just re-stick frame a building and move the stuff over? So anyway, it's I'm sure it'd be more expensive, but how much more expensive? Is it 25, 50% more, and you get, how much more bang for your buck are you getting, So, it's another upside to having a concrete tank, and it secures the hatch if you do go that route, where it's inside the building, so. Definitely a lot of systems of that size, or buildings of that size, that's been a very popular, move, is people going onto concrete and then building on top of it,
Okay.
so. But again, something I can go back and forth with Nick on
Well, you
that.
just said on top of it, literally, or just?
Literally, yeah, you essentially use the tank as a foundation to your pump house.
Yeah.
It's all underground.
Yep.
We were talking about fixing the floor on the existing station.
Right.
That would become the new floor.
Yep.
Yeah,
But the ultimate goal is to get to put uranium
Right,
mitigation.
you'd have your treatment on
filtration.
there, and it's all obviously, load weighted, we've done this numerous times, so you end up with the treatment equipment, there'd be no problem at all, if the concrete's rated for it, so. Yeah, it's an option, and it's something that, depending on how extravagant, or how large the project gets, removing the tank and rebuilding that wall, and, I know that we've had questions with the roof and the siding over there, and different things over the years, so, can't quite picture right now. I know it was a conversation point when we were doing the upgrade to it 5-ish years ago. They were talking about redoing the siding because they got treed in, and that was starting to rot, and different things that we don't really look at too hard. But
Yeah.
the interior of the building's pretty good, but as you guys know too, it's gotten moisture in there at different times. It's so even the drywall could be argued that it probably ought to come out if we're doing a major project in there. So anyway, just something to look at different options before we pull the trigger on that one.
Okay,
Um,
so what this does, it says we need a meeting with Nick
Mhm.
and give him an email preview of what this is and not go ahead and do the cement floor,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
which,
Yeah.
so
sounds like
Well-
it might be more.
we'll concentrate the contractor for the concrete on the outhouse possibly after we get a hold of.
The other, we'd have to prep, because if we do have to remove some material from that building before it gets poured, so I don't know how, if that is
Oh,
something,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the
Um,
bigger rocks on the floor.
Yeah, and I know this is exactly what you wanted me to avoid doing, but the other thing to actually think about on that is, if we're gonna invest that kind of money into Muddy Beach, do we look at drilling another well out of DPW and doing 2 wells out there and not having, because that's, obviously DPW is fully capable of running the system, it's that we don't have any redundancy to it. So Muddy Beach becomes the redundant spare
Right.
system, which has proven time and time again as not being it doesn't have enough water and peak demand to supply you guys for more than a week, and that's a push.
And you think that the second well isn't competing with the first well?
It's not about the competition, there's enough water there, you almost have no drawdown in that well. It's that if the pump goes, right, we don't have, there's whatever failure that we have, on the well end itself, we don't have the backup. So now all the utility is there, all you'd have to do is have a second well, either well 1, well 2, that would just kind of operate separately, and if well 1 goes down, well 2 runs until well 1 gets replaced. And now that's your redundant spare to the system.
I put that well in 1995, DL
Great
Mar,
well.
$60,000.
Isn't that wild? It's not gonna be 60,000 to drill a new one, but the upside is, you do have a lot of the permitting already done. If you're going in the exact same radius, it's going to be cheaper than finding an entirely new site altogether. I know that we have a little, I shouldn't say I know there's been conversations about what our setbacks are, and you guys have done a lot to make sure we maintain those setbacks, but, the state might have questions on it, but it's something that's at least worth exploring
Yes.
before we dump a bunch of money into, it's
Getting into
absolutely a
uranium
better water
business.
quality. I mean, pH is a very simple fix. Uranium is a long-term cost. You get into having to change out the medias on a pretty frequent basis, and
Disposal?
it's expensive. It's very expensive. I mean, I was just talking with a customer last night about it. Just to have the company come from Connecticut, which is where the disposal happens, is about $4,000 give or take for their travel, and then it's somewhere around $750 per cubic foot of media for disposal. So if you add, I don't know, 20 cubic feet of media, you're talking $15,000 every time you got to exchange it, and then you get the labor of actually doing the work and changing the tanks out and doing
Right.
everything. So you guys use a lot of water, a lot more than this customer I'm talking about. You might on a yearly basis or every 2 years be changing out uranium media. It'd be a very significant expense we'd have to consider. So.
I like that aquifer that DPW1 is into.
Yeah.
We hit water at 57 feet.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally, and it's right there. I mean, you look
It
down,
is.
it's, the water's that table, it's, your pump is 63 feet deep, that's it.
When, I heard one engineer many years ago say that aquifer is 4,000 feet deep.
It seems to be very plentiful. That's, like I said, the pump is currently set at 63 feet deep. I don't know, I've never looked into what the engineering was on putting in that well. I
It
would
went down
assume
75, hitting
That's it.
water at 57.
they went down 75 feet. So, I mean,
And
you always
there
have.
was a hydrogeologist that had the well digger lay out. He took gravel samples,
Yeah.
they were all laid out in the ground so he could see what the stratus looked like,
It's crazy.
and designed the stainless steel screen based on what he was seeing for the stratus.
Oh, wow.
Had a company in Minnesota manufacture it to his spec,
Yeah.
flew it to Boston, DLMA picked it up, drove it up here, they welded it to the bottom pipe and dropped it down.
Wow.
It's quite an
It is,
operation.
it is quite a, I mean, even the pitless on that one, it's a 3-inch hang. It's a different setup than I've seen.
That was $9,000 for the pitless adapter.
Well, it's a very different style than I've ever seen before, so it's a good setup, I mean, there's no two ways about it, and like I said, the amount of water we have available there, which we're not even pushing, we can certainly get more out of the well than we're taking now. You gotta think of it, we're not trying to double up how much water we're taking, we're just putting in a backup source in the
Right.
same.
So the only thing we're doing is relying on the same power source if we use
So
those
what
two.
that would do, and that was gonna be the caveat, it would absolutely push the envelope on wanting to have a
Generators.
generator there, which is just, in the grand scheme of things, a relatively low cost, and it's a huge, like, it just saves the, us having a generator, it would probably pay for itself over the course of 10 years when we have outages that we kind of chase around doing setups for and everything else. I think we would find that it's a very valuable resource down there, especially where the office is, and keeping everything moving, the main DPW building. I mean, it's kind of 3 birds, 1 stone down there, and then it's only having to worry about one single primary source that you have to do power for. So, yeah, it's a very consolidated area right there. We have a lot going on. It's a lot of benefit. Everything you do over there is beneficial to multiple parties. So, that would be another.
It's easier to protect too.
It is.
Other than 113's right there. and
Yeah, but-
A bad truck could do some nasty things if it flipped over.
Good.
The wrong stuff on it.
Oh,
So, if I'm understanding this conversation correctly, there's a potential here to phase out our Muddy Beach station, which we would know is uranium prone,
Yeah.
and put in our backup redundant station
Yeah.
right where DPW 1 is. And
Yeah. I think it's a
Eliminate
cost
tank,
exploration to look into.
Eliminate a pumping system at Muddy Beach, all of that. The humidifier doesn't work anymore, we don't need that anymore.
Well, it's one less station that takes tons of different things that you guys have to upkeep over there that,
But you're right, your point is Muddy Beach is no longer,
wouldn't be
we can
that.
close it off.
I've been having a conversation with Muddy Beach for years, and it's just the viability of that source has been in question since our usage in district became 60,000, 70,000 kind of baseline. We just can't expect that thing to go a week. We know we're gonna overdraw the wells. We know that what happens when we overdraw the wells, we see higher uranium number. And after this resurgence of the aquifers a year, I guess it was a year and a half ago, after the drought, we're kind of getting back into one, but anyway, that's, I think, you guys, along with a lot of other people, saw water quality changes. This goes hand in hand with the resurgence of it, and boom, all of a sudden, we got a little bit different water path that's taking more uranium with it, and that's why you're seeing this effect. I don't think it's gonna go away on its own. I think we're seeing that through the testing. Maybe 5 years from now, things change, who knows? But in the short term, I don't expect to see improvement on those numbers. So, yeah, I mean, you're really looking at treatment at this point. Being ahead of the curve is always better than waiting for the state to come down on you, and it is a super expensive route to take. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, you're talking 20, 30 grand a year, you have to kind of be earmarking towards upkeep on that equipment. So, without thinking too hard about it, that's a pretty safe bet.
And that's a good loan payment on a loan to put a DPW 1.
Right, if you're $500,000 on
That's
that,
a 2 well end.
which might be realistic, between drilling it and permitting and everything, it still is like you said, that's your payoff on that would be, you just have a lot more reliable source and I don't know. So, something worth exploring, in my opinion, so.
yeah,
What do you think?
I'm glad that came up, because we've been basically focused on what do we do to get Muddy
Muddy
Beach
Beach.
cleaned up and operating well. Now we got a whole nother route that seems to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, because there's just capacity issues, there's a whole lot of things that have been kind of rolling around with Muddy Beach as far as, like you said, the quality of the tank has been in question for decades, I don't know, it's always been a conversation point. The available flow, now we got the uranium issue, we got the structural issues, it's just like, all right, well, what are, so it's a good time to at least consider other options before pulling the trigger on
Another
on a major
benefit
overhaul.
is that the main that runs out of Muddy Beach is actually in Madison Road
Yep,
until it gets to,
you got 3, 4 houses anyway before it turns into Idolize, right?
no. There's no houses connected to it. There's only one house between the Muddy Beach, right next to Muddy Beach. There's a non-Idolize house.
Right.
But that stretch of road until you come to the first houses. Idolize starts before those 2 houses. So there's probably 1,000 feet
Really?
of water main that's in Madison Road that
Right.
we could
Eliminate.
eliminate, shut it off. Now,
Quick question, does DES have a requirement that to permit a new well, they require that all users be metered? My understanding is that used to be a requirement. I don't know if it still is or not.
Honestly, I was looking into it, Doug, I don't have the answer to that, I don't believe so, if you're tying it to,
Existing.
sometimes their funding, if you try to get funding through granting with them or something like that, they can put stipulations to it that, if you privately fund it, I don't believe they'd have much control over it, but.
if that's a rule, it's contrary to Skarinka saying many years ago that he was adamantly against the idea of Idolize having meters. because of the second home nature of the village.
Right, well, it's a payback for your costs, and we don't really have it here.
Right, it doesn't slant the costs in the right
No.
direction.
I
He was
I
saying
think
that-
there's different scenarios on that too, like if you're trying to re-permit a well because you are having issues with keeping up with water flow, they'll sometimes make you put in meters because what they wanna be sure of is that you're not taking 20,000 gallons out of the ground a day and only putting 4,000 gallons of water into the homes a day, right? That tells you that your source is fine, you don't really need to drill a new well, it's that you're losing 80% of your water in between source and distribution, to the home.
We can get into more details about all these subjects, but I
Okay,
think
sorry.
on the higher level,
Yeah.
we're now going to activate Nick on this. We had it right that we,
Right.
Yeah.
right? We don't,
Yeah,
we don't need to,
Nope,
we-
I think it's,
we'll discuss
let's
this
get-
further, but at this point, we need to get Nick involved and
yeah,
start.
you gotta
this
see if it's a
program.
viable option and have him start looking that way before we get into
Beautiful.
detail.
Anything
Okay.
else that any of us want to talk about?
Yeah, I want to get back to the uranium
Yes,
issue, the notification.
we'll just do this and that'll be it for today.
Yeah. Okay, so there was a test done back in April where the Muddy Beach, where the test came in at 68.2, and we know the upper limit is 30. But they also gave us data points going back 12 months prior to that test of April 24, so that the running average was 32, just a skosh above the uppermost limit. All right? And the last test, not the last test, the second before last one, back in July came in at 25.5. So, whoa, hey, what? We're below that 30, no problem. Now the latest test, it jumps up to 86.8, which is way above the 30. Now we've got to go put out a notify all the customers of the water system. But they didn't give us a full, all those data points going back 12 months. They only gave 2 data points of the 25.5 and then the 86.8 to come up with a running average,
Who is
running
they?
annual
Sorry.
average.
New Hampshire
DES?
DES.
Yeah, New Hampshire DES.
You have a one-stop site that has 100% of your sampling data on it, going back to like
Yeah.
70s. So you can get a deeper view on that, so we can get you that information.
All right, well, I'm wondering, I was wondering if some of these tests only involved one well at a time. We had a well that was out for a long time,
So
right?
the way they have always taken that sample is as a blended source, and I believe they're splitting that now, making you guys sample each well individually. I'm sorry, again, I don't do samples, I don't keep that tight of an eye on it, but as far as I know, it was always a combined source sample. So whatever, if well 1 was the only one running, there was no stipulation to that. No one knew if it was 2 and 1, 1 and 2, what the primary source was. I call it an oversight, I don't know why they didn't, because typically you have to individually source sample your wells, and for whatever reason, they didn't do that here. Now, again, they're going to, but, so yes, you're right, there's no way of knowing which well had been it could just be day by day. If there had been a rotation to the wells, right, and the tank had turned over the course of 24 hours with, when that thing's pumping out, it only takes an hour to kind of turn the tank over. So it could have been well 2 was primary during one sample, and well 1 was primary during the next sample. There's, like, that 25 might have been from the shallow well, and the 86 might be from the deep well. We don't know that except for testing individually on the actual wells themselves. So you're correct in wondering is it typically well 1? Yes, because that's the bigger, more dominant well. It's deeper. It can, when well 2 has to shut off because the aquifer is kind of bled down, going. 2, if we were to run Muddy Beach as primary source, well 2 would be offline within about 24 hours.
Okay, so that's just for my personal edification.
Yeah.
Now, the second piece of the equation is, I've got people calling me and they're kind of freaking out.
Sure.
Okay, so the first thing I always cite is on the notification that we give them, that goes out, it says, right, this is not an emergency. If it had been, you would have been notified immediately.
Is that through
Okay.
the DES's
Yes.
information?
Yes,
That's
Yes.
the form.
DES, okay? Now, I want to make sure, but I can't just leave it there. They want to discuss more, and I want to
I
make
have
sure.
a lot of these conversations too, yeah, I know.
Okay.
It's,
So I try and reassure people that Muddy Beach only provides really a small percentage of the overall drinking water to the VDOE, and the DPW one is the primary source. So in my mind, theoretically, it would dilute.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to boil it down, I mean,
Pushing, yeah.
the technical want here is to do about 15 to 20% of the water from Muddy Beach, right? Now, I'm not 100% sure, I believe there's 0 uranium coming out of DPW, I might be wrong, but it's whatever it is, it's gonna be very minimal, right? So let's say we had 80 with 20% of the water, you know, and 0 with 80% of the water, obviously your blend is going to be below this 30,
Right. Right.
you know, limit. So what you're telling people is true, that's our goal, right? Well, with communication issues we've had at Muddy Beach, which is currently offline because I cannot get it to work
Yeah.
properly.
Right.
It either runs, or it doesn't run. So it's a miss in comms is what's causing this. So is that true 100% of the time? No. We you know, last, you know, recent history, we haven't been able to run Muddy Beach the way we want to. So while what you're saying is theoretically true, yes, that's the goal, that's not always going to be the case. Doesn't mean you should change what you're, I think that it's a fair, right now, Muddy Beach is offline, you tell people that, you know, we don't even have that one, running, and that will not be the case in a couple of
Let's
weeks.
be
You gotta-
clear about that.
Yes.
The reason that Muddy Beach is offline right now is the
Communication,
communications problem,
yes, not the
Which-
uranium.
which you characterized earlier this year as snowflakes.
Yeah,
That in the fall, in the springtime, the communications start to work.
we expected comms to actually be, we usually lose them in the fall, which doesn't make sense, but when, you know, we usually lose comms in fall, and they become very unpredictable. And there is a graphic on this you guys can check out on the, you can kind of see the
Yeah.
Dixon. So we typically would have them returned by now to at least, and I'm going off, you know, mental notes here, but we would typically have a little higher expectations of the comms at this point. I don't know why they're not kind of getting better. I mean, we've had to readjust that antenna half dozen times. It might just be time to, you know, have somebody come.
So there's another reason to decommission Muddy Beach is not having.
Comms are,
solid-
yeah, they're just very unreliable at this point.
So let me interject here, because you were talking about people contacting you. I've been trying to communicate about this to people through social media. And then we have a newsletter that came out by an individual that does newsletters every once in a while. And here's what this says. The backup wells at Muddy Beach have been out of operation for several months, ostensibly because of the uranium levels exceeding acceptable levels, but the reality is that the output seems to have declined. It has nothing to do with uranium.
Right.
No, that's not why we're not running it.
So this is limited distribution by email, but this kind of stuff, this happens everywhere, all over the
Yeah.
world.
It does.
And I just need to be able to state
We are not,
emphatically that this is not true, it's not
we are
uranium.
not running it because of the high uranium, we are not running it because of that, nor has the state dictated to us. We do everything we do based off what the state wants us to do. You as a water system, to kind of bridge two things here, when I have these conversations with people, I tell them, you know, we are heavily, the DES is an extremely conservative group. They are going to be, they lean towards safety very hard, over practicality, over cost, they lean towards safety. You guys have not been asked to do anything more than additional sampling, which is
Yeah.
exactly what you're
Right.
doing. You're keeping an eye on it. If it was to worsen, they will change what their recommendation is to you. You will then follow that recommendation, or could be not just a recommendation, but a you know, forced
Yeah.
motive or whatever. You guys will obviously comply with that and do whatever is asked of you to do.
We're
right?
actually planning in anticipation of that happening.
I think you guys are well ahead of the curve in average. You know, a lot of people would just wait this out, see what happens, cross your fingers, hope for the best, you know, whatever you want to say, right? Obviously, you guys are already having a pretty deep conversation about alternative options to either repairing this issue here or finding an alternate source. You are doing everything you're supposed to do, and that's how I typically leave this with people when they say, hey, Mike, should I be afraid to drink this water? Should I give this to my kids? Because that's what you're being asked, right? I mean, that's what people
Yeah,
are,
right.
that's what people are wondering. The best thing you can do is send them a uranium fact sheet, get them in touch with somebody at DES, and have them have these conversations with them, because they're gonna be a lot more knowledgeable about
Yeah.
health effects, limits, you know, why the limits are set where they are, what the actual, like, risk analysis is based behind that, and you're gonna be amazed at how, again, how conservative they've set those numbers. You know, it's a lifetime of water use, 30 years of a gallon of water a day, what your risk analysis of either, you know, renal failure, whatever might come with these different contaminants we test for, they can paint a much better picture, and people will have a better understanding of how safe their water really is, even when they're seeing something like this show up. Because if the state was concerned, believe me, you guys would be
Okay.
under administrative order.
But
to do
people don't
something.
wanna dive that deep, they just wanna hear the concise summary from us.
You guys have to be really careful about what you say.
Well,
That's
okay,
how,
so I'm gonna say, if, let's just say Muddy Beach was working properly, no communication problems, pumps are all working,
Yep.
everything's fine, it's all working all the time, it contributes approximately 20% of the entire water system.
that's the
Okay,
attempted yield, yes.
so there's a big dilution there
Yes.
of whatever uranium is in it. Plus, we have, I'm looking at, I know there's a lot more, but I could quote right now by looking at these papers, we have 7 data points, and only 2 of them exceeded the uppermost limit.
I'd be careful about that. We're doing 20% out of Muddy Beach, we're doing 80% out of DPW1. Where it gets mixed is the issue.
Well, yeah, there's a lot, because you obviously, this is distribution fed tank lines, right? So you have direct, anywhere between Muddy Beach and Rhineac Tank, it's going to have a much heavier concentration of Muddy Beach water, you know, so as you travel down the tail end of Idlewice Drive, and you travel up over, you know, Fusis or Appinvale or whatnot, as you're taking that, or, you know, that pathway to Jungfrau, more than likely that water is gonna be a heavier blend of Muddy Beach water, assuming Muddy Beach is online.
That's my point.
Yes.
Oh.
And you always wanna, you don't wanna,
Yeah.
I know this is hard,
So you can't talk about it that way.
Yeah.
all right, that's.
all you wanna do is just give, and I know that, I know what I'm saying is hard, and that people wanna get an answer, but you can't give them the peace of mind they're looking for, because all you can give them is the information. You know, you guys could have a packet ready to be sent out by email to them that says, here's our most recent testing data, here's a uranium fact sheet, here's a number to DES.
Yeah.
That's essentially what we do. When people call the office, I try to tell them, like, listen, the state's a very conservative organization, you know, we are following their rules to a T. We are even going above and beyond. We're preemptively looking at solutions to this, because we also want to make sure you guys are comfortable with the quality of drinking water you have. But at the end of the day, all we can do is what the state is, or all we typically do is what the state is asking us to do, and we are doing exactly that. We have, all that they believe is necessary at the moment is to, you know, increase testing, you know, frequency. We're doing that, and they say, well, yeah, that's all great. Can I drink the water? You can't say yes or no to that. You never want to put yourself in a position when you're telling somebody something other than what the paperwork says. right?
Every state has a website that talks about it in their state. None of the states say the same thing.
No,
So what I've been doing is pointing them to what New Hampshire DES says on their website about it.
yep,
And that's them, that's not me
no.
becoming a junior scientist for them.
This is why they have fact sheets, this is why they have that information, this is why they have phone lines to DES, because they have people on staff that are there to help people navigate these questions. I mean, if the DES thought your water was unsafe to drink, that vote violation notice would look a lot different. It would be a lot more aggressive in its terminology. It would be saying, this water is not safe to drink, do not drink the water,
Right.
find alternate sources of water.
They say
You know,
right away, this is not an
Right,
emergency.
this is, and it's hard for people because, and it's, you know, I try to explain to people, you guys have always hovered 20, 25 parts, you know, and at Muddy Beach, we've always, you know, 18, whatever, we've always been right there near the limits. It's never, we just all of a sudden crossed them. You know, your problem is worsened by, let's say, 15%. So their water quality hasn't changed that much. Their realization of what the water qualities are has changed because now it's being notified to them. How much worse is their water in general? Well, or worse is a, you know, relative term. Very insignificantly worse, but it's now being brought to their attention, and that's why they do this, so that people have. This is just public education. This really is just so people they have a threshold that they think at that point people should be at least knowledgeable that there's a contaminant in the water. To hey, if you have a personal issue with this thing, fluoride, beryllium, uranium, whatever some of these things people typically show up over the limit for, you know, you might have a doctor that's told you, hey, with what your specific life conditions are, you should be extremely careful about X, Y, Z. So you're putting this notification out for those people.
So
The
this
general
notification
populace,
is a new program. I
No.
don't recall seeing this.
no, you guys just haven't ever
Yeah, we
actually.
just never crossed it.
Oh, okay.
Very rarely have you crossed your uranium threshold in the past 20 years. So this is, and now, and obviously the last 2 years you've done it, it's been
It's the
relatively
second
frequent.
time, yeah.
Second time, yeah.
So But no, I mean, there's a ton of public water systems that put out notifications like this every
All the
single,
time.
Have you seen the maps
Quarter.
of where uranium is in New Hampshire?
well, we're like a hotspot here in Madison.
It's, yeah, if you see the
Oh, I know.
map, the odds of you putting a home well in and not
I have
hitting
treatment
uranium
systems
is-
in 100 homes within, you know,
Wow.
a 2-mile radius of
I
here.
was thinking of publishing the map, because what I did was, it doesn't show any boundaries of towns. So I did an overlay and pinpointed where Madison is.
Yeah.
The odds of hitting
Oh,
uranium
no,
in
you're
Madison.
high, very high.
This is through the middle of the state.
It's honestly amazing that you've gotten away with the Muddy Beach wells as long as you have, because you are in like, it's just a well-known problem area. I mean, everything between Idlewild and Rock House, which I, you know, I think I told you guys, Rock House also has treatment. I've put tons of RO and uranium softeners in between, just in those extents, probably 15 of the homes in between, just those bounds I've had to put them in. So you guys are in a very hot spot for uranium. So again, we've been pretty fortunate with the way those are tested out. I don't know, does the system do a sample? I know we test our sources, I know we do it at Young Frau, we do it at DPW. Is there like a general system? I'll have to look into it, if there's like a sample being taken just like as a distribution sample outside of like a well site.
I don't know, every time I've seen.
Because your
this
question about the
notification,
uranium,
it's
the only way
always
you find
when
that out is you go to a point in the middle of
Don't
distribution
they
and
test
you
the
sample.
summit? Do you remember if they tested?
Bacteria.
Bacteria, I
I
don't
don't know
think
that they
they do
do
it for
any-
No, I don't
uranium.
think uranium.
So the only way you're gonna find out what it looks like in distribution is to pick points in distribution and test it.
Oh, wow.
So you could do that, and see, you know, a point down on Idlewild Drive, a point out in the middle of, I don't know, wherever, pick a few places out.
Summit.
Yeah, Como Summit's a great place, cause it's kind of all come together and gone away, so, you know, we can do non-compliance for that, if you guys have a curiosity on it, I think it's about $30 a uranium sample, so maybe 45, I can't remember.
That'd be worth it, I think.
You guys, do you want us to grab uranium samples? We can do it when we're up here today. From just Summit and just see what you look
Yeah.
like.
Grab
Okay.
one from the summit.
I'll do a non-compliance, it'll just be on non-state paperwork, we'll just do it for our own purposes, to see
Okay.
what we
Okay,
got
just to
going on.
see.
and-
The
Yeah,
more we know. So let's stop there?
Yeah.
Did you get all your answers?
I did,
alright,
thank you.
Thank you.
excellent, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
too.
I'm not missing anything, right? Anything you wanted
No.
Okay.
No.
Good.
Stay on the road, Noah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right there. Thank you.
to?
Take care.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Okay, so at 9:59, we go to schedule the, we'll go to administrator's report. Neighborhood energy proposal. Neighborhood energy.
Yeah,
Is that a
Tad.
different company?
Tad.
That's Tad.
That's not First Power?
It is.
There's several names for it?
Well,
Uh-huh.